Really good to see you again, and I do hope you are having a very fruitful and productive summit. Buenos dias to all of our friends coming from Latin America as well. Well, before we start, I just wanted to take a moment and reflect about what's happening in Florida, and we're seeing a terrible natural disaster about to hit that region, a Hurricane Milton, who's I think now stage 5, and huge evacuation happening in that part of the world. So obviously our thoughts and prayers are with all of those affected and being evacuated. But today we're actually going to be touching on the impacts that climate change can have on islands. So it's actually very unfortunately timely. So I just wanted to leave that thought and hope for the least human impact really. So as Jamie said, today we're talking about these reports, and those of you that know us and have seen our previous reports in previous years, and actually earlier this year, we also launched a report in Latin America. So our data tends to be global, but we like to look at regions particularly, because as we know, and as Julia said yesterday, travel and tourism is recovering and thriving, and we're very pleased to see that. But when we look at regions, we know there's still potential, and there's still a lot more that can be done when we're talking about travel and tourism. So being here in Australia, we wanted to look at Oceania, and this region of more than 10,000 islands spread across the Pacific Ocean. Obviously, we all know the Oceania, Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea. There's so many that we've heard of, but there are other smaller islands that are part of this region, like Tonga, Samoa, Palau, so many others that, of course, are very important for our sector, but where the theme and the topic of sustainability and climate change becomes a real priority. So what we've done with this report is look at the economic landscape and our figures for 2024, but then also look towards the future. And Nejc here and the team at research look at potential projections. So that's what we're going to talk you through today, is where the region is at, but if there's certain things that are implemented, what could the potential look like, and what could the future look like for travel and tourism in this region? So I think we've got some slides with numbers, yeah. So 2024, again, we're talking about recovery, and it has certainly been a year of growth for Oceania. We are expecting the sector to grow about 16.5% above pre-pandemic levels. So certainly really, really positive growth. This would reach a total value of $224 billion. Employment supported by the sector is also projected to surpass pre-COVID-19 levels by 4.8%, employing approximately 2.3 million people and demonstrating strong job recovery across the region. Now, what's interesting is that while the total figures are very positive, when we look at the spread between domestic and international, international visitor spending is still below 2019 levels. So while the overall sector has recovered, we know obviously domestic tourism has played an important role, but international visitors perhaps have not come back at the same pace as domestic. And we do see this in other parts of the world, and that's why everything you heard on stage is about how we can really boost international travel to make a full recovery. So in this region particularly, for international visitor spending, we're anticipating a full recovery by next year, 2025, particularly with this international market. Now, we're going to look ahead at the next decade. So we always like to make that forecast and understand where our sector is headed. So in this region, our current projections say that our sector is forecasted to grow at an annual growth rate of about 3.2%. This is actually something Julia mentioned in her speech. So if nothing changes over the next decade, our sector will grow in average 3.2% over the next decade. That is already above the economy. So it's definitely positive. Travel and tourism is growing faster, we can say, than the overall economy. And this would contribute about $306 billion to the regional economy. However, what we are looking into is what could the potential be. So basically, these figures are the case if things continue as they are, okay? And precisely what we've done with our research team is look at an upside scenario. How could we, so we know, thanks to our data and analysis, and thanks to Nejc here and the team at the back, that we could unlock additional 29 billion for the region of Oceania if the right investments are made. And that would bring the total contribution to about $336 billion and an additional 300,000 jobs, bringing the total employment in the sector to 3.5 million. Now, what we're going to discuss briefly is how could we get there and what are the specific things that need to be put in place to reach that. So the first one, which is perhaps not going to sound news, but is incredibly important, particularly for this region, is improving regional connectivity. We know we're closer to Asia, but connectivity is incredibly important, particularly for this part of the world. There's no other way we can get here. Of course, with cruises, but I think airlines and air routes are really crucial to get here, but also streamlining visa processes across this region. So we're working with a number of partners, particularly VFS, who kindly sponsored this report, looking at how can we come up with faster and implement technology to streamline those visa requirements. And the second one is investing in sustainable infrastructure to mitigate precisely the impacts of climate change. So in this, just going into a bit more detail, in this report, we're just making a series of recommendations around investment in airport expansions, as I was saying, and enhancing air connectivity, development of energy sources. So as we've seen from our global environmental data that was released earlier today, we are becoming greener when it comes to energy. We're less dependent on fossil fuels, but there's still a very long way to go. And again, this is something that is really going to support the sector's environmental footprint and appeal also to those more environmentally friendly conscious travelers. We're looking also at protecting indigenous communities. We've heard a lot today from Waitok and really the Premier and many others on how precious these roots are and how important it is to preserve these cultures, to preserve this history, and how these new travelers are really looking at experiencing these sort of more genuine types of tourism. Streamlining visa facilitation, as I've already discussed, which will allow seamless travel between the Pacific Islands. It was really interesting to hear to a member from trip.com in China and look at the news coming out of China in terms of how many new countries can now access China visa-free. This is something that perhaps a few years ago was difficult to believe, and it's really good to see governments around the world getting it and really trying to streamline that. Actually, Perth Airport, I hope it was a good experience to all of you, how you can just come in with your face, no matter where you're coming from. Or I know there is a visa requirement, but the way that is being implemented is again, really successful. And we all, as travelers and consumers, are looking for that as our member was saying, reduce anxiety really when it comes to travel. And then lastly, so visas and benefiting all of the communities and indigenous people. So effectively what we're saying is we're looking at these practices when it comes to security at borders and technology, when it comes to protecting the environment, investing in sustainability, investing in infrastructure. What we can see, particularly for the region of Oceania, is that we can unlock an additional 29 billion and generate or create 300,000 jobs. But those investments obviously need to be made now. It is a unique opportunity in this region, but also a real pressing challenge with exactly what we're seeing in other regions around the world with climate change. So we need to protect these islands, we need to protect these regions, and we need to hope that we're going to continue to see this potential and more, but also ensuring that that positively benefits all the community. So that is our message. I really thank you for being here, and also thank our partners at BFS for making this happen.